Why are we here? Who put us here?
I don't know.
Is there a point to our existence?
Probably not.
Probably not. Anyways, Americans have changed their morals and goals throughout the year. That even matters in the grand scheme of things.
Doesn't.
Many historical and social events have impacted generations. The American dream and women's rights suffrage both culturally affected Americans, and civil rights in World War II affected Americans historically.
One of the stories that we picked was Speaking of Courage, and in the story, it's just talking, or in one of the parts of the story, it's just talking about how when the soldiers come back from war, like, they just, like, want to talk about the war or just talk to people in general. And then also, one of the quotes or evidence from the story about that is, how would you like to hear about the war? And then another part is how the soldiers feel like they're not heroes and how they feel like they could have done more. And then the evidence from that is, though none of them were for valor. And then also it's, I almost won the Silver Star, so he was just talking about how if he would have like done something more or done something different, then like he could have done that, even though like he had enough courage to even go to war in the first place.
The next story that we got was the yellow wallpaper, and a quote we found was, if a physician of high standing and one's own husband assures friends and relatives that there is really nothing the matter with one but temporary nervous depression, a slight hysterical tendency, what is one to do? So I take phosphates or phosphites, whichever it is, and tonics and journeys and air and exercise and am absolutely forbidden to work until I am well again. Personally, I disagree with their ideas. So this is just saying like how everyone, like her family and her husband, were saying that she was sick or depressed, and she didn't agree with like what they were saying, and like this shows how she was trying to be independent and for herself, and it shows how in those times women branched off and like showed independence and questioned like their authority and men.
In The Great Gatsby, there's a main part where Gatsby has a lot of money, and you know we read that, and he covered up a lot of things with his money. So one big like rumor and like feature of the book was that every time he thought he'd be in trouble, he would always like fix it with money. But there were a lot of rumors about him, that he killed a man, that he was a cousin of Kaiser Wilhelm, that he served in the army, that he was just an entirely different person. But because of the American dream and people's goals, they only saw it as what people wanted them to see them as. So using money and using manipulation to convince people that he was perfect. But like, there are people that aren't dumb, you know, so they obviously found out who he was.
Fall for his little shenanigans.
So it really affected the way that like people you like thought in the societal norm. It affects them because everyone thinks of this perfect like norm and this perfect ideal that to be. Kind of like Instagram, you know, you only show your face that you want people to see, but like they don't actually know who you are. So it affects them by being fake, basically.
Culturally, the civil rights movement had very significant impact on Americans. It showed how Americans could come together and fight against a singular evil cause. And we used the Harlem poem to sort of describe this, and how many African Americans, they felt like they were going to explode almost. Maybe it just sags like a heavy load, or does it explode? It refers to how civil rights it's been kept inside themselves for so long, and it's been such a deep, dark evil from our nation that like if we don't mention it soon, we would collapse as a nation. And so Americans had to come together and fight that, and it had a sort of a twist on how Americans used to like love old-fashioned stuff, and they would not want to advance, but now we had to advance, and we had to make our nation better. That's sort of a way the American dream was changed.
The article we found on women's suffrage in the 1800s was talking about how like women back then were often like overpowered or shadowed by the men, like by men, and it affected women now because usually women now want to be independent and like they want to branch out to be like their own person, and they don't want to be like in the shadow of men. And so
There was an article on civil rights for the New York Times that also described civil rights in a sort of way that we had to grow as a nation. It wasn't just fighting one cause. And so that article sort of ties back to the Harlem poem and it unifies our thesis, which is good.
Yep.
Okay, we're done.
We're done.
Snap, crackle, pop.
And scene. So we'll see you guys next time.
See y'all. Love you. Deuces. Why are we here? Who put us here? Why are we here? Who put us here? Why are we here? Who put us here? Why are we here? Who put us here?
I don't know.
The internet thingy. American dream and women's rights suffrage culturally affected Americans. Both culturally affected Americans, and civil rights in World War II affected Americans historically.
Are you doing it?
I must be
Oh, Jack, don't you normally do like
just lighting. I told y'all shit.
Alright.
Yeah.